So when you go to page 5, this formula will not be given to you. But in my opinion, this is the easiest question on the test. It's worth 4 points. It should really be worth like 2. So let's dissect this formula. Work is equal to that F is force. So this is at the top of page 5, so you can write your definitions for each term. D is distance. And then theta is your angle. And you just substitute it right into your formula. So it says that a boy pulls his brother in a cart with force. So force is 22. If the rope pulling the cart forms a 38-degree angle with the ground, determine the amount of work if the boy pulls the cart 25 meters. So yes, your 3 numbers. So we're just going to substitute it in. Pick up your calculators. Work equals force times distance times the cosine of 38 degrees. So everything is to the thousands place. We're just going to keep it simple. So type that in your calculator just like that. So again, work is force times distance times the cosine of the angle. So when you type that in your calculator, you should get 433.406, and the unit for work is joules. And that would be your answer. So on the test Friday, that's a 4-point question. So should be an easy 4 points. All right, any questions about how we work through that? And again, you need to know this formula. So this is one of those critical formulas that you need to memorize. Okay, let's look at question number 2. So question 2 says we have an airplane, and the airplane has a horizontal component of 300, a vertical component of 500, resulting in a magnitude of 583 per hour. If the wind is blowing 40 miles per hour, and here's the trick, it says from the east. So if you put your never eat soggy waffles, if you are blowing from the east, then what direction is the wind blowing? West. So the wind is blowing west. I'm going to write that. Because it says from the east. All right, and what is the angle right here? What's the angle if you go around this circle? What would this be right here? Wait, one more time. Who said it? I heard it. 180. So anytime it's blowing west, we're going to use 180. And anytime it blows east, we're going to use 0. As far as wind, those are the only 2 angles we're going to use. 180 or 0. All right, so to find the speed is going to be the plane plus the wind. So they already told us that the plane had a horizontal and vertical component of 300, 500. So I can write my vector. So this vector is for the plane. Now to find the vector for the wind, if we go back to find our horizontal and vertical component, you take the speed. For x is speed times cosine of theta. For y is speed times sine of theta. So for the wind, I'm going to have to erase some of this stuff. So hopefully you have it. So for the wind, it's going to be 40. So here, let me back it up. So delta x for the wind is 40 cosine of 180. And delta y is 40 sine of 180. Go ahead and type that in your calculator to get your component form for the wind. If you don't remember what the cosine of 180 is, go ahead and type it in your calculator. So that is what you should get. So now we have to add these together to get the resultant vector. So the result vector so you're going to pick up your calculators. You're adding 300 and negative 40. And then you're adding 500 and 0. So we're trying to create a vector that represents the plane and the wind. Which I got 260 and 500. All right, any questions about how we got that? Because now we're going to use that vector to find the magnitude. Speed is the same as magnitude. So to find the speed, you're going to take the square root of delta x squared plus delta y squared. Go ahead and type that in your calculator to get the speed. Which gives you 563, and then it was like 560, so I just cut off the 0. And we're flying, this is miles per hour. That's the unit that they told us in the question. So that would be my speed. Okay, so now we need to find the direction. We're actually looking for the heading. So first we're going to find the direction and then subtract that from 90. So, because when you're making your vector, we have, the vector is like this, because we're in the first quadrant. So when we find the direction, that's the angle we're looking for. This is the direction. But I want the heading, which means I have to subtract it. The heading is 90 minus theta. So let's go ahead and find our heading. So heading, well, let's start off by finding the direction. Direction is going to be the inverse tangent, and it's y over x. Go ahead, type that in your calculator. And I got 62.526. That's the direction. But the question is asking for the heading. So to find your heading, it's 90 minus theta, or 90 minus 62.526 degrees. Go ahead, type that in your calculator. That should not happen. It should not happen because it's in the first quadrant. So you usually always get something between 0 and 90. The only time you may not is if cosine is in quadrants 3 or 4. Sure. So when you type that in your calculator, you should get, hold on, what did I get? 27 0.474. And that is your answer. So you got your heading and you have your speed. So I'm going to go ahead and zoom out. Give you a chance to finish that question up, and then we'll do 3. Let's see. Six points. 6 out of 50. 12%. All right. Any questions about number, what is this, number 2? All right, let's look at number 3. So we have a soccer player running forward. So that's the important clue. The soccer player is running forward. His speed is 7 meters per second. And then we have the ball that has a velocity of 30 and it's going at an angle of 10 degrees. And we need to find the speed and direction of the ball and the player. So we got to start off with the player. So the player is running forward. So if you're running this direction, what angle would that be? Is that 0 or 180? 0. So the player has a angle of 0. So it would be 7 cosine 0 and then 7 sine 0. And then our ball has a velocity of 30, so that would be 30 cosine 10, 30 sine 10. All right, go ahead and find these 4 numbers with your calculator. So 7 cosine 0 is 7 because the cosine of 0 is 1. And 1 times 7 is 7. And then the sine of 0, oh, that says theta. That should say 0. Hold on, let me fix that. 0. That's a 0. Because our angle, because we're running forward, is 0. So that would be, this is my vector for the player. Now go ahead and type that in your calculator to get the vector for the ball. Round it to the thousandths place. So type in 30 cosine 10, 30 sine 10. So that would be 29.544 and 5.209. All right, who had that? So what am I going to do with these vectors to get the result? Add them. So the result is what you get when you add your horizontals and your verticals. So let's do that. So if you take 7 plus 29.544 and 0 plus 5.209, you should get 36.544 and 5.209. So this time it's asking us for the speed, which is your magnitude, and the direction. So using this vector, find your speed or your magnitude. Formula for magnitude. You just square both of those components. Go ahead, type that in your calculator to get your speed. So magnitude is the same as speed. And this is meters per second, because if you look at the question, it says meters per second. So your speed should be 36.913 meters per second. And now your direction is the inverse tangent of y over x. Go ahead, type that in your calculator, just like that. And it's not asking for direction, so we don't need to subtract that from 90.
The direction of the kick?
It's saying that the direction of the ball, of the kick, yeah, of the kick, yeah. Because the kick is the player and the ball together. So that would be, let me go ahead and move this up a little bit. That would be your final answer. That's your direction, and that is your speed. So looking at the test, let me see. Because it didn't ask for the heading. Yes, that's the key word. If you see the word heading, you have to subtract it from 90. That's a good question. Okay, I'm going to skip ahead and do one more question, but I want to do number 6. And I'm going to give you a chance to set it up. So we have to figure out airplane and the wind. So the airplane, okay, so it says it's ascending, creating a 42-degree angle with the ground, and the speed is 405. So remember, to find your component, it's always speed times the cosine of theta and speed times the sine of theta. So take a minute. So I skipped all the way to number 6, by the way. So I'm going to do 4 and 5 tomorrow. And then you have, what's your other component going to be? 405 what? Sine 42. Okay. So now it says that the wind is blowing at a speed of 25 miles per hour from the east. So never eat soggy waffles. If I'm blowing from the east, then what angle am I using? 0 or 180? 180. So in your calculators, oops, that should be cosine. Okay, so take a minute, get these 4 numbers and add them together. So I'll give you a minute to work on that. Okay, so that's what I got from my result. Anyone else get that? 275.974 and 270.998. Raise your hand if you had those two numbers. All right, good. So now you're home free. So to find your speed, go ahead, type that in your calculator. So that would be my speed. And then it's asking us for the heading. But the first thing we need to do is find our direction. And then subtract that number from 90. So the direction is the inverse tangent of y over x. Which is 44.479 degrees. But this is asking for the heading, so what do I have to do with that number? Subtract it from 90. So your heading is 90 minus the direction, which is 90 minus 44.479 degrees. Which gives you 45.521 degrees. That's your heading. So we're going to, and that would be your final answers. Tomorrow we're going to do 4 and 5, and then I'll pass out your study guide.